Take the hood off. Officer Ryan Caldwell's voice cut across the gas station parking lot, sharp enough to silence the people standing near the pumps. 16-year-old Ethan Brooks remained still beside the patrol car, his hands visible, his backpack resting on the pavement near his sneakers. The late afternoon heat rose from the asphalt in shimmering waves, and somewhere behind him, a car door clicked shut. No one spoke. No one asked why the description of a suspected thief had been so vague. A teenager. Dark clothes. Seen near the store. Caldwell had looked across the lot, seen Ethan waiting alone beside the bus stop, and decided the rest. Ethan swallowed and repeated the rule his mother had taught him years ago: keep your hands open, keep your voice calm, remember every name. My phone has my bus pass and the time I left school, he said. It can show you where I was. Caldwell picked up the phone from the hood of the patrol car and glanced at the cracked screen. You can explain it downtown. Ethan's stomach tightened. The woman who had reported her wallet missing stood beneath the bright red gas station sign, hugging her purse against her side. She avoided his eyes. She had never identified him. She had never even said the person she saw was black. But the officer was already opening the rear door of the cruiser. Ethan looked toward the store windows, where several faces hovered behind the glass, curious but motionless. A man near Pump 6 held up his phone, recording from a distance. Caldwell noticed him and shifted his body, blocking the view. That small movement frightened Ethan more than the accusation. It meant the officer understood how the scene looked. Call my mother, Ethan said. I'm a minor. Caldwell paused, then gave him a thin smile that carried no warmth. You can call her after we figure out what you've done. Ethan stared at his phone. Before the screen went dark, a tiny blue symbol flashed near the top. The emergency upload had activated. His mother had installed it after a neighborhood meeting the previous summer, telling him that evidence mattered most when powerful people believed nobody was watching. The device sent the last 5 minutes of audio to one protected contact: Mom, emergency. Caldwell placed the phone inside an evidence bag without noticing. Ethan lowered himself into the back seat, careful not to make any sudden movement. The door closed, sealing him behind thick glass. Outside, the ordinary world continued. Pumps beeped. Tires rolled over gravel. A delivery truck turned onto the highway. Yet everything inside Ethan had narrowed to one detail: the silver badge above Caldwell's chest, number 4172. He repeated it silently. 4172. 4172. As the cruiser pulled away, Ethan saw his backpack still lying near the curb. One of his robotics textbooks had slipped halfway out, its white pages fluttering in the hot wind. Then the gas station disappeared behind them. 12 miles away, inside a windowless federal conference room, Special Agent Danielle Brooks felt her phone vibrate once against the table. She looked down, saw the emergency symbol beside her son's name, and pressed play. The first voice she heard was not Ethan's. It was Caldwell's saying, "Doesn't matter what his phone shows. Kids like him always have an excuse." Danielle's face did not change, but every person around the table felt the room grow colder. She listened for 7 seconds, locked the screen, and stood. "Preserve every server at Precinct 12, she said. "No calls ahead." Ethan kept his eyes on the mesh divider as the patrol car moved through late afternoon traffic. Streetlights passed in steady intervals, each one flashing across the rear window and disappearing. He counted turns instead of minutes. Left at the pharmacy. Right past the tire shop. Straight for nearly 2 miles. His mother had taught him that panic made details blur, so he forced himself to notice everything. The radio code Caldwell used. The time glowing on the dashboard. The name printed beneath the officer photograph clipped near the console. Ethan Brooks had never needed those lessons before, but Danielle had repeated them anyway, not because she wanted him to fear the world, but because she understood how quickly a misunderstanding could become a record. At school, Ethan was known for patience. He spent lunch periods in the robotics lab, repairing loose wires and helping younger students debug their code. He worked 3 evenings a week at Miller Computer Repair, where customers trusted him with family photographs, tax files, and laptops they swore had simply stopped working on their own. He was saving for a new soldering station and for the small birthday gift now sitting in his backpack at the gas station. The gift was not expensive. A brass keychain engraved with 3 words, "Always come home." He had ordered it after Danielle missed dinner twice during a federal case and returned both nights too tired to eat. Now, as the precinct came into view, those words pressed against his mind. The station was a square brick building with narrow windows and a flag moving weakly in the heat. Caldwell parked near the side entrance and opened the rear door. Out. Ethan stepped onto the pavement. He kept his movements slow. "My mother needs to know where I am." Caldwell reached for his arm, then seemed to remember the security camera above the door. "You will get your call." Inside, the air smelled like old coffee, floor cleaner, and paper warmed by fluorescent lights. A desk sergeant glanced up, saw Ethan, then looked back at his computer. No surprise. No question. Caldwell placed the evidence bag containing Ethan's phone on the counter and spoke in a low voice to another officer. Ethan caught only fragments. Wallet. Possible match. Uncooperative. That last word struck him harder than the others. He had followed every instruction. He had answered every question. Yet the story was already changing. A female officer with a silver nameplate reading Bennett looked from Ethan to Caldwell. Her eyes paused on the clear evidence bag. "Was anything recovered?" she asked. Caldwell did not answer immediately. "We are still processing." Bennett looked at Ethan's empty hands, then at the intake form. Something in her expression tightened, but she said nothing. Ethan was led to a small holding room with a metal bench bolted to the wall. The door closed with a soft mechanical click. He sat beneath a camera mounted in the corner and pressed his palms flat against his knees. "Keep your hands open. Keep your voice calm. Remember every name." Through the narrow window, he saw Caldwell speaking with Sergeant Mark Hensley, a broad man with gray at his temples and a coffee stain on his uniform sleeve. Hensley read the report, nodded once, and never looked toward the holding room. Ethan understood then that the most dangerous moment had not happened in the parking lot. It was happening here, where words were becoming official. 12 miles away, Danielle walked quickly beside 2 federal attorneys as encrypted preservation orders moved through secure channels. She had not called the precinct. She had not called Ethan. Every instinct in her body demanded that she hear his voice, but years of investigations had taught her one brutal truth: the moment guilty people realize evidence matters, evidence begins to disappear. Danielle crossed the federal operations floor without slowing, her phone silent in her hand and Ethan's emergency recording locked behind an evidence seal. Around her, monitors glowed with maps, case numbers, and timelines that had taken 6 months to build. Precinct 12 had appeared in those files again and again. Complaints dismissed for lack of evidence. Body camera footage marked corrupted. Arrest reports rewritten hours after booking. Names changed, dates adjusted, details softened until misconduct looked like confusion. Ryan Caldwell's name sat near the center of it all. Danielle had studied his record late at night, never imagining that one day her own son would enter it. "The preservation order is moving," Assistant United States Attorney Rachel Monroe said, matching Danielle's pace. "Local servers, dispatch logs, body cameras, hallway feeds, and evidence intake." "What about remote backups?" Danielle asked. "Covered. No warning to the station." "None." Danielle nodded once. Her control looked effortless, but beneath it, every second pulled at her. She pictured Ethan at 8 years old, sitting at their kitchen table while she taught him how to describe an officer without insulting one. Hair color. Badge number. Vehicle number. Direction of travel. She hated that the lesson had ever been necessary. She hated more that it had become useful. Her phone vibrated again. A second audio fragment had arrived automatically from the damaged device before the connection failed. Danielle stopped beside a glass conference wall and listened through one earbud. Caldwell's voice came first, distant but clear. "He fits well enough." Then another man asked, "Did the witness identify him?" A pause followed. "She will." Danielle removed the earbud. Rachel saw the change in her face. "Was that Hensley?" "Yes." Sergeant Mark Hensley had supervised 3 disputed arrests connected to Caldwell. Each case had collapsed quietly, but not before the people involved lost jobs, missed rent, or spent money they did not have defending themselves. Danielle had promised the investigation would not move until the evidence could survive every challenge. Now Patience felt like betrayal. "I need to go to the station," she said. Rachel stepped in front of her, not blocking, only reminding. "As his mother or as the case agent?" The question landed heavily. Danielle looked through the glass at the evidence board. Photographs. Complaint numbers. Red lines linking names across years. If she entered as an angry parent and revealed the investigation too soon, someone could erase the very proof that might protect Ethan and everyone who came before him. If she stayed away, her son would face the system alone. Both, Danielle said. But they cannot know that yet. At Precinct 12, Ethan watched Hensley enter the holding room carrying a paper cup and a thin folder. The sergeant pulled out the chair across from him and sat without introducing himself. "You made this harder than it needed to be," Hensley said. Ethan kept his palms visible on his knees. "I asked to call my mother." "You will." Hensley opened the folder. "First, we clear up a few things." He read from Caldwell's report in a flat voice. According to the page, Ethan had ignored commands, attempted to leave, and acted aggressively when questioned. Ethan listened without interrupting, but his pulse climbed with every sentence. None of it had happened. The report did not describe him. It described the boy they needed him to become. "That is not accurate," Ethan said. Hensley leaned back. "Officer Caldwell has no reason to lie." "Neither do I." The fluorescent light buzzed above them. Hensley studied him as though calmness itself were suspicious. "Your mother teach you to talk like that?" Ethan thought of Danielle's steady voice at the kitchen table. "Do not let anyone rush you into agreeing with words that are not true." He nodded. "She taught me to listen carefully." Outside the room, Officer Laura Bennett stood at the intake desk with Ethan's property sheet in her hands. The form listed a wallet among the recovered items. She looked toward the evidence counter. The clear bag held only a phone, a transit card, and a set of house keys. No wallet. She checked the arrest timestamp, then the time Caldwell entered the station. 7 minutes were missing. Bennett glanced toward the hallway camera. Its red indicator light was still blinking. Then Caldwell reached up, pressed a switch beneath the monitor, and the light went dark. The red light above the hallway camera went dark, but Officer Laura Bennett did not move. For 1 second, the station seemed to hold its breath. The printer stopped. The dispatch radio softened between calls. Even the air conditioner sounded too loud. Caldwell lowered his hand from the switch and glanced toward her. "Problem." Bennett looked down at the property sheet before he could read her face. "The inventory does not match the evidence bag." Caldwell walked closer. "It will." 2 words. "Come." "Certain." The kind of answer that expected obedience. Bennett felt the paper grow damp beneath her fingers. She had been with the department for 19 months, long enough to recognize when a mistake was becoming a decision. Inside the holding room, Ethan watched Hensley slide the folder across the table. "Read the last page," the sergeant said. Ethan did. The statement claimed he had been near the gas station during the reported theft, had refused to cooperate, and had possessed property matching the victim's description. A signature line waited at the bottom. "That is not what happened. It is your chance to explain what happened." "Those are not my words." Hensley folded his hands. "You sign, we sort this out faster." Ethan looked toward the camera in the corner. Its indicator remained red. Unlike the hallway unit, this one was still recording. His fear did not leave, but it changed shape. It became smaller. Sharper. Something he could use. "Can you read the part where it says the wallet was found?" Hensley's eyes narrowed. "You can read." Ethan raised his voice slightly, not enough to sound defiant, only enough for the microphone above them to hear every word. "The report says a brown leather wallet was recovered from my backpack at 5:43 in the afternoon." Hensley reached for the folder. Ethan kept reading. "The property sheet was created at 5:51. I arrived at the station at 5:48. My backpack was left at the gas station." Silence pressed against the walls. Hensley pulled the page back. You do not need to narrate the paperwork. I want the record to be accurate. The sergeant stood. His chair scraped across the floor. The record is what the officer observed. Then Officer Caldwell observed something that was not there. Outside, Bennett heard every word through the monitoring speaker. She looked again at the intake sheet, then at the hallway where Caldwell had disappeared. Ethan was right. His backpack had not entered the building with him. She checked the digital dispatch log. The responding officer had marked the bag as unsecured property awaiting retrieval. Yet the report already claimed evidence had been found inside it. Bennett copied the incident number onto the back of her hand, then opened the archive system on the nearest terminal. 3 complaints appeared under Caldwell's name from the past year. All involved young black men. All mentioned property found after transport. All had been closed by Hensley. Her heartbeat quickened. Behind the holding room door, Hensley lowered his voice. You are making this harder for yourself. Ethan thought of his mother at their kitchen table, tapping one finger against a legal pad. When someone pressures you to move fast, slow down. When someone tells you the truth is complicated, ask which part. He pushed the statement away. I am not signing something false. Hensley stared at him for a long moment, then opened the door. Caldwell stood outside holding a brown leather wallet inside a clear plastic bag. Bennett saw it. So did Ethan. Caldwell placed it on the metal table with deliberate care. Found near his property, he said. Ethan looked at the evidence label. The time had been written in fresh black ink. 5:43. 8 minutes before anyone had returned to the gas station. Ethan lifted his eyes. That label was made before you found it. Caldwell's expression hardened, but Ethan continued. The hallway camera was on when I arrived. The intake camera was on when my phone was logged. The dispatch system recorded when you left the station. Preserve all of it. Hensley gave a short laugh. You think you are a lawyer? No, Ethan looked straight at the dark doorway behind them. I think evidence disappears when nobody asks for it. Across town, Danielle stepped into an unmarked federal vehicle as a judge signed the final preservation order. Her phone displayed the station's live server status. One hallway camera had just gone offline. She handed the screen to Rachel Monroe. They started erasing, Danielle said. Rachel closed the car door. Then we are done waiting. Caldwell closed the holding room door behind him and set the sealed wallet on the table as if the plastic bag could make the story true. Hensley remained standing near the wall, arms folded, his expression flat beneath the fluorescent light. Ethan looked from one man to the other and understood that they were no longer asking questions. They were building an answer. Sign the statement, Caldwell said. He placed a black pen beside the final page. You cooperate, this ends tonight. Ethan stared at the signature line. The letters of his name had already been typed beneath it. Ethan Brooks. 16 years old. Student. Suspect. For words arranged to make him look smaller than the 2 men standing over him. My backpack was not here when that report was written, Ethan said. Caldwell leaned one hand against the table. We recovered the wallet near your property. That is not what the report says. Hensley stepped forward. You are arguing over language. Ethan shook his head. Language is the record. The room went still. Caldwell picked up the pen and pushed it closer. Your mother is probably worried. Sign, and you can explain everything to her at home. For the first time, Ethan felt his calm begin to crack. Not because he believed them, but because they had used Danielle's concern as pressure. He pictured her checking the clock, calling his school, wondering why he had not answered. He pictured the small brass keychain still inside the backpack by the gas station, the words always come home hidden beneath a robotics textbook. His fingers tightened against his knees. Then he remembered her voice. Never agree to a lie just because the truth is taking too long. Ethan lifted the statement, read the first sentence aloud, and stopped at the claim that he had attempted to flee. I was standing at the bus stop. He read the next line. It says the witness identified me. Caldwell's jaw tightened. She gave a matching description. Did she identify me? No answer came. Ethan turned to Hensley. Did she see my face? The sergeant looked toward the door. Caldwell reached for the paper, but Ethan placed it flat on the table. I want my request for a parent and an attorney added to the record. You are not directing this interview, Hensley said. Then why is the camera off? Ethan asked. Both men looked toward the corner. The red indicator that had been glowing minutes earlier was dark. Ethan had not seen anyone touch it. That frightened him, but he kept his voice level. Turn it back on. Caldwell gave a quiet laugh. You think you are in control because you learned a few legal phrases? No, Ethan said. I think you turned off the camera because you know what you are doing is wrong. The words landed harder than he expected. Hensley's face changed first. Not anger. Alarm. Caldwell reached for the wallet and the statement at the same time, gathering both too quickly. The pen rolled off the table and struck the floor with a hollow click. Outside the room, Laura Bennett stood beside the monitoring station with her phone hidden beneath a stack of forms. Before the camera feed vanished, she had taken photographs of the intake screen, the property log, and the timestamp attached to the wallet entry. She sent them to a secure personal account, then deleted the outgoing notice from her device. Her hands trembled, but she did not stop. On the main desk, a system alert appeared without sound. Federal Preservation Order received. Automatic deletion suspended. Bennett read it twice. Across the station, Caldwell opened the door and saw the alert reflected on the monitor. The color drained from his face. Who authorized that? He demanded. No one answered. Then the front desk telephone rang. Hensley picked it up, listened for 3 seconds, and looked toward the entrance. She is here, he said. Caldwell glanced back at Ethan. Who? Hensley lowered the receiver slowly. His mother. Outside, an unmarked black vehicle stopped beneath the station lights. Danielle Brooks stepped onto the sidewalk wearing a plain charcoal coat, carrying no visible badge, her face composed and unreadable. Behind her, another vehicle turned into the lot and switched off its headlights. Danielle entered the station without rushing. The front doors opened with a soft mechanical sigh, and warm night air followed her across the tile before sealing outside. She wore a charcoal coat over a plain navy blouse, no visible badge, no weapon in sight, nothing that announced authority. To the officers behind the front desk, she looked like what they expected to see, a worried black mother arriving too late and asking too many questions. Hensley stepped forward before she reached the counter. You are Ethan Brooks's mother. I am. Her voice was calm enough to make him uncomfortable. He is being held in connection with a theft investigation. Has he been charged? Hensley hesitated. The investigation is ongoing. Danielle placed both hands lightly on the counter. What time was he detained? A little before 6. What was the legal basis for searching his property? Probable cause. Based on what specific fact? Hensley's eyes moved toward Caldwell, who stood several feet away holding the folder against his side. Danielle noticed the movement. She noticed the dark hallway camera. She noticed the open property screen, displaying a federal preservation notice. She noticed Laura Bennett watching from the intake desk with the expression of someone carrying a truth that had become too heavy. The witness provided a description, Caldwell said. Danielle turned to him. Did the witness identify my son? The description was consistent. That was not my question. The station grew quieter. A dispatcher lowered the volume on her radio. Somewhere behind a closed door, a printer started and stopped. Caldwell straightened. Ma'am, I understand you are upset. I am not upset. Danielle looked past him toward the narrow window of the holding room. Ethan sat beneath the dead camera with his hands resting on his knees. His face was composed, but she could see the effort it cost him. For one brief second, their eyes met through the glass. Ethan did not call out. He only gave the smallest shake of his head, the signal they had practiced for situations where speaking could make things worse. I am here. I am listening. Do not rush. Danielle's throat tightened, but her expression did not change. She turned back to Hensley. Was my son given access to a parent or an attorney before questioning? We were conducting a preliminary interview. Was it recorded? Hensley glanced at the camera monitor. There appears to have been a technical issue. When did the issue begin? No answer. Danielle continued. Who logged the wallet into evidence? Caldwell spoke quickly. I did. At what time? The system has the timestamp. I asked if you knew. His mouth closed. Each question was simple. Each answer made the room feel narrower. Danielle could feel Ethan watching from behind the glass, and she understood that he had already seen the pattern. They were not afraid of her yet. They believed they were dealing with a mother who needed information. That belief was useful. I would like to see the property inventory, she said. Hensley shook his head. That is not available to the public during an active investigation. Then tell me whether his backpack is inside this building. Caldwell's grip tightened on the folder. His property was recovered. That is not an answer. Laura Bennett looked down at her desk. Danielle saw it. A pause too deliberate. A breath held too long. Officer Bennett, Danielle said, reading the nameplate, was Ethan's backpack present when he arrived? Every face turned toward her. Bennett looked at Hensley, then Caldwell, then through the glass at Ethan. No, she said. One word changed the room. Caldwell stepped toward her. That is not your determination to make. Bennett lifted her chin. It was not here. Danielle let the silence remain. If this moment touched your heart, remember that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is one person deciding not to look away. Danielle reached into her coat, but instead of producing a badge, she removed her phone and placed it on the counter. She pressed play. Caldwell's recorded voice filled the station. Does not matter what his phone shows. Kids like him always have an excuse. No one moved. Then another voice followed. Hensley's. Did the witness identify him? Caldwell answered, she will. The recording ended. Danielle looked toward the holding room once more. Ethan was still sitting upright, still waiting, still trusting her to finish what he had begun. Behind the station, a second set of doors opened. Footsteps entered the corridor in a steady line. Danielle finally reached inside her coat again, and this time her hand closed around the leather case containing her federal credentials. Danielle opened the leather case and placed her credentials beside the phone. The gold seal caught the fluorescent light before the words beneath it became clear. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Danielle Brooks. Civil Rights Division. For the first time since she entered the station, Caldwell had nothing to say. Hensley looked toward the rear corridor, where 3 federal agents, 2 internal affairs investigators, and Assistant United States Attorney Rachel Monroe were walking toward the front desk. Their footsteps were measured, almost quiet, but every officer in the room heard them. Rachel carried a signed order in one hand and a sealed evidence packet in the other. No one touches a computer, camera system, evidence locker, or case file, she said. This facility is now under a Federal Preservation Directive. Caldwell stared at Danielle's credentials, then at the holding room. Understanding reached him slowly. You are his mother. Danielle met his eyes. I am also the case agent assigned to investigate a pattern of unlawful arrests, altered reports, and missing video connected to this precinct. The color left Hensley's face. You cannot investigate a case involving your own son. I will not make charging decisions in his individual matter, Danielle said. But the investigation began 6 months before you brought him through that door. Rachel placed the signed order on the counter. Independent prosecutors will handle everything involving Ethan Brooks. The existing civil rights investigation continues under federal supervision. One of the agents moved toward the server room. Another photographed the dark hallway camera and the switch beneath its monitor. An internal affairs investigator collected the intake log before anyone could close the screen. Caldwell stepped back. This is being misunderstood. Danielle turned her phone toward him and replayed the sentence that had already changed the air inside the station. Kids like him always have an excuse. Caldwell looked around as though someone else might explain his own voice. No one did. Laura Bennett left the intake desk and approached Rachel with the property sheet in her hand. Her steps were careful, but her voice was steady. The backpack was not present when the wallet was entered into evidence. The report timestamp was created before Officer Caldwell returned to the gas station. I photographed the screen before the hallway camera was turned off. Caldwell faced her. You had no authorization to copy department records. Bennett did not look away. I had an obligation not to let them disappear. Rachel accepted the paper. Where are the photographs? Stored outside the department system. Good. The word was quiet, but it gave Bennett enough strength to stand straighter. Behind the holding room glass, Ethan watched the station transform around him. The same desks. The same officers. The same cold lights. Yet the balance had shifted. Not because his mother had shouted. Not because anyone had made a threat. The truth had entered the room with paperwork, timestamps, and people who could no longer pretend not to see. Danielle walked to the holding room door. Hensley moved as if to stop her, then froze when Rachel looked at him. An investigator unlocked the door. Ethan stood slowly. For 1 second, neither mother nor son spoke. Danielle saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the careful way he held his shoulders, the effort he had spent remaining calm while adults changed facts around him. Ethan saw the badge in her hand and understood why she had asked questions before reaching for him. Are you all right? She asked. Yes. His voice was quiet. Did you sign anything? No. Danielle let out the breath she had been holding since the emergency alert reached her phone. Good. Ethan looked past her at Caldwell. The wallet was not in my backpack. We know, Danielle said. Rachel entered with the recovered dispatch data displayed on a tablet. The gas station camera had already been secured remotely. The footage showed the woman entering the store with her wallet still in her hand several minutes after Ethan arrived at the bus stop. A second camera showed a white man in a gray jacket picking it up near the checkout counter and leaving through the side door. Ethan had never entered the store. He had never touched the wallet. Then the station server produced something worse. The intake system showed Caldwell creating the evidence entry at 5:43, 7 minutes before he claimed to have recovered the item. The hallway camera had captured him carrying the empty evidence bag into a supply room. The recording ended only when he switched the camera off. Hensley lowered himself into a chair as though his legs had forgotten their purpose. Caldwell remained standing, but the authority had drained from his posture. Danielle did not celebrate. She looked at the rows of archived complaint numbers appearing on the federal monitor, each one attached to another name, another family, another person who had been told the record mattered more than their word. Open every case connected to him, she said. Rachel nodded. Every one. Ethan stepped out of the holding room beside his mother. As they passed Caldwell, the officer finally spoke. I made a judgment call. Danielle stopped, but she did not turn around immediately. No, she said. You made a person fit a story you had already decided to believe. Then she continued walking, while behind her, federal agents began sealing the station's evidence room. The station did not return to normal after Ethan stepped into the main corridor. It became quieter instead. Federal agents photographed evidence seals, copied server logs, and placed numbered tags beside computer terminals that had once seemed ordinary. Every small sound carried farther now. A keyboard click. A drawer closing. The soft tearing of evidence tape. Danielle stood beside Ethan while Rachel Monroe reviewed the preliminary findings with Captain Thomas Reed, who had arrived from home wearing a white dress shirt beneath an unbuttoned uniform jacket. Reed looked older under the fluorescent lights than he had in department photographs. He read the altered intake record, then watched the gas station footage twice. The second time, he lowered the tablet without speaking. This happened inside my station, he said. Danielle did not soften the answer. It happened under your command. Reed looked through the glass toward Caldwell, who now sat in a conference room with an internal affairs investigator. Hensley occupied a separate office across the hall. Neither man could see the other. What happens next? Reed asked. Rachel closed the evidence folder. Officer Caldwell is suspended pending federal and departmental investigations. Sergeant Hensley is removed from supervisory duty. The evidence handling unit will be audited, and every arrest connected to these officers will be reviewed. Reed nodded slowly, but Ethan noticed that his attention remained on the paperwork, not on the people the paperwork had harmed. "There is someone else here," Ethan said. The adults turned toward him. "Marcus Hill. He was in the holding area before they moved me. He said Caldwell arrested him 3 times. Bennett checked the custody board. He is still downstairs on a trespassing charge." Ethan looked at Danielle. "He said he was waiting for a bus outside a closed pharmacy." The words created a silence different from the others. Danielle had spent months studying names, dates, and complaints, but Ethan had met one of those names as a person sitting beside him on a metal bench. She turned to Rachel. "Get counsel to him before anyone conducts another interview." Rachel nodded to one of the federal attorneys. Ethan could have walked out then. Danielle wanted him outside, away from the cold lights and guarded doors. Yet he remained near the holding corridor until Marcus appeared with an attorney beside him. Marcus was in his late 50s, with tired eyes and a work jacket folded over one arm. He looked confused by the sudden presence of federal agents. Then he saw Ethan. "You still standing, young man?" Ethan gave a small nod. "Yes, sir." Marcus looked toward Danielle's credentials. Understanding flickered across his face, followed by something less simple than relief. "They listened because of who your mother is." Ethan glanced at the officers around them. "They should have listened before they knew." Marcus studied him for a moment, then smiled without warmth. "That is the whole problem." Danielle heard it. So did Reed. The captain finally looked away from the reports and toward the men whose complaints his department had closed. "Mr. Hill," he began, "I owe you an apology." Marcus lifted one hand. "An apology is not a reopened case." Reed stopped. Danielle watched the captain absorb the correction. "Then your case will be reopened," he said. "All of them will." Marcus did not thank him. He simply nodded once, as though promises had become too expensive to accept without proof. Nearby, Laura Bennett handed Rachel a list of incident numbers she had copied from the archive. "There are 14, she said. "Maybe more." Her voice shook, but she continued. "I saw things that did not make sense. I told myself I was new. I told myself someone above me would handle it." Danielle looked at her. "And tonight?" Bennett glanced at Ethan. "Tonight I realized silence was helping the wrong people." Ethan stepped closer. Bennett's eyes filled with shame before he spoke. "You told the truth. When it mattered." She shook her head. "It mattered before tonight." "Then keep telling it," Ethan said. The kindness in his voice unsettled her more than anger would have. She had expected judgment. He gave her responsibility instead. Reed approached Ethan slowly. "What happened to you should never have happened." Ethan met his gaze. "Do not call me a mistake in a report." Reed frowned. "What do you mean?" "Call me Ethan. Then call Marcus by his name. Then look at every person in those files the same way." The captain's face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough for the authority in him to give way to recognition. "You are right, Ethan." Danielle placed a hand lightly on her son's shoulder. She had entered prepared to protect him. Instead, he was reminding the room what protection was supposed to mean. Behind them, the evidence room door closed beneath a federal seal. Ahead, the front doors opened to the cool night. Ethan could have left without looking back, but he waited until Marcus and his attorney walked beside them. 3 weeks later, the gas station parking lot looked ordinary again. Cars moved between the pumps. The red sign hummed above the convenience store. A city bus sighed at the curb and opened its doors beneath a pale morning sky. Ethan stood on a short ladder near the corner of the building, tightening the final screw on a new security camera. The store owner had hired Miller Computer Repair to replace the damaged system, and Ethan had asked to take the job himself. He adjusted the lens until the entire bus stop, sidewalk, and front entrance appeared on the monitor inside. Nothing hidden. Nothing left outside the frame. Danielle waited near the service van with 2 cups of hot chocolate resting on the hood. She watched her son work with the same patience he brought to every machine, checking each connection twice even when the first test passed. He had returned to school. His scholarship application was still on schedule. The charge against him had been erased, and the city had issued a formal acknowledgement that he had been detained without sufficient cause. Yet Danielle knew official language could not remove the memory of a locked room or the feeling of watching adults build a lie around him. Some things did not disappear when a file was corrected. They had to be carried differently. Across town, Caldwell and Hensley had been removed from duty while federal prosecutors reviewed the evidence. 14 closed complaints had become 23 reopened cases. Marcus Hill's trespassing charge had been dismissed, and an independent review confirmed that 2 of his earlier arrests relied on reports containing altered times. Laura Bennett had entered a protected cooperation agreement and provided records that led investigators to 3 more missing videos. Captain Reed announced new evidence procedures, mandatory outside review for disputed arrests, and immediate parental notification when minors were detained. None of it could undo what had already happened. But for the first time, the department was no longer allowed to call a pattern a misunderstanding. Ethan climbed down from the ladder and wiped his hands on a cloth. "It is ready," he said. The store owner studied the monitor. "That camera can see everything. Everything that happens out front." Ethan paused. "And the footage backs up automatically. Nobody here can erase it." The owner looked at him for a moment, understanding the meaning beneath the explanation. "Good," he said quietly. Outside, Danielle handed Ethan one of the cups. He reached into the van and pulled out the backpack that had finally been returned from evidence. The corner was scuffed, and one strap had been twisted, but the robotics book was still inside. So was the small gift box. Ethan offered it to her. "This was supposed to be for your birthday." Danielle opened it carefully. A brass keychain rested against the cotton lining. "Always come home." Her eyes softened. "You remembered. You were the one who came for me." Danielle closed her fingers around the keychain. "You brought yourself home too. You stayed calm. You protected the truth." Ethan looked toward the patch of pavement where the patrol car had stood. "I was scared." "Courage does not mean you were not scared," she said. "It means fear did not decide who you became." A black federal vehicle passed on the road. Beyond the station, heading toward the courthouse. Caldwell sat in the back seat beside an attorney, his face turned away from the window. Ethan noticed the vehicle, but he did not follow it with his eyes. He looked instead at the new camera above the store. Its small indicator changed from red to green. "Recording secured." The words appeared at the bottom of the monitor. Danielle placed the keychain beside her badge, 2 kinds of proof resting in the same hand. One represented authority. The other represented love. That morning had taught her which one gave the first its meaning. Marcus arrived at the bus stop carrying a lunch bag and wearing a clean work jacket. He had recently started a maintenance job at the county library after his reopened case cleared an old background flag. Ethan stepped aside and made room beneath the shelter. The bus approached from 2 blocks away, sunlight flashing across its windshield. No speeches followed. No crowd gathered. Just 3 people standing where one of them had once been judged before anyone knew his name. The bus doors opened. Marcus climbed aboard. Ethan lifted a hand as it pulled away. Danielle rested her palm on her son's shoulder, and together they watched the street return to motion. Justice had not arrived with shouting. It had arrived because a frightened teenager refused to sign a lie, a young officer chose truth over silence, and a mother used power without surrendering her humanity. Kindness had not made them weak. It had kept them from becoming the people who had wronged them. And as the green light continued to glow above the parking lot, one question remained for everyone who heard their story: when the truth depends on someone speaking up, would you have the courage to be the first voice in the room?